Dr. Hyunwoo Kim rubbed his tired eyes and stared at the endless stream of data flowing across his computer screens. The Deep Space Communication Array had been running for 112 years without detecting a single intelligent alien signal. Every day brought the same result. Nothing but cosmic background noise and the occasional pulsar. The research station orbited Kepler 442b, a world that Earth scientists had once thought might support life. They were wrong. The planet below was a frozen wasteland with an atmosphere that would kill any human in seconds. But humans had built a thriving mining colony there anyway. That was what humans did. They went to places that should have killed them and made them home. Hyunwoo walked to the observation deck and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, according to every mathematical model, there should be other intelligent species. The galaxy was huge and old. Life had to exist somewhere else. But where was everyone? His colleague Dr. So-Young Park joined him at the window. She carried a cup of coffee that steamed in the recycled air of the station. So-Young studied alien languages for a living, which was a strange job since no alien languages had ever been found. "Still nothing?" she asked. "Same as always," Hyunwoo replied. Dead silence. So-Young had spent 15 years preparing for the day when humanity would make first contact with alien life. She had created theoretical frameworks for translating unknown languages. She had studied every possible way that non-human intelligence might communicate. But the universe remained stubbornly quiet. "Maybe we really are alone," she said softly. Hyunwoo shook his head. "The numbers don't support that. There are 400 billion stars in this galaxy alone. Even if the chance of intelligent life is incredibly small, there should be thousands of species out there." Then where are they? It was the question that haunted every scientist who studied the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. Earth's radio signals had been traveling through space for over 2 centuries. Human colonies now existed in 12 star systems. Surely someone should have noticed them by now. Hyunwoo returned to his workstation and began the daily routine of analyzing the previous night's data collection. The array consisted of thousands of radio telescopes spread across the system, all working together to listen for any sign of intelligent communication. Most days the analysis took about an hour. Today would be different. At 14:32 station time, the computers detected something unusual. A repeating signal was coming from the direction of the Vega system, 25 light-years away. Hyunwoo's heart began to race as he isolated the transmission and ran it through the analysis programs. The signal was definitely artificial. It contained mathematical sequences that could only have been created by intelligence. But something was strange about it. The transmission was not aimed at Earth or any human colony. Instead, it appeared to be a general broadcast sent in all directions. "So-Young," Hyunwoo called across the laboratory. "You need to see this." She hurried over and looked at the data streaming across his screens. Her eyes widened as she recognized the patterns. "This is definitely a language. Look at these repetitive structures. And these mathematical proofs embedded in the message. Can you translate it?" So-Young began working with the translation programs she had spent years developing. The process was slow and difficult. The alien language was unlike anything she had theorized, but gradually meaning began to emerge from the symbols and sounds. "It's a warning," she said after 3 hours of work. "They're warning about something called the harvesters. And there's something else. They mention Earth." "Earth? How do they know about Earth?" So-Young's face was pale as she continued translating. "They say Earth is a death world. They call humans Deathworlders. And they say contact with Deathworlders is forbidden." Hyunwoo felt a chill run down his spine. "Keep translating. We need to understand what this means." As the hours passed, more of the message became clear. The signal was not meant for human ears. It was a desperate communication between members of something called the Galactic Federation. They were fleeing from an enemy that consumed entire star systems. And they were terrified of making contact with the inhabitants of Earth. "According to this," So-Young said, "there's been a galactic civilization for thousands of years. They know about every intelligent species in this part of the galaxy, including us. But they've never tried to contact us? No, they're afraid of us. They classify Earth as one of the most dangerous planets in known space. They think we're monsters." Hyunwoo stared at the translated message. Humans had always wondered why the universe seemed empty of intelligent life. Now they had their answer. The other species were out there, but they were hiding from humanity. "Look at this section." So-Young pointed to a part of the translation. "They describe Earth's environment. They say our gravity would crush most species. Our atmosphere is poisonous. Our weather patterns are catastrophic. And the life forms that evolved here are described as unnaturally aggressive predators, and they're talking about us. Yes, they see humans as the products of a world so hostile that it created beings capable of surviving anything. They call us apex predators from a Deathworld. The message continued with descriptions of the harvesters, the enemy that was driving the Federation species to extinction. These creatures had been consuming intelligent civilizations for centuries, stripping planets bare of all resources and life. The Federation species were peaceful by nature and had no effective way to fight back. There's more, So Young said as she finished translating the final sections. The signal is a distress call. They're asking for help from anyone who might be listening. They don't think anyone will answer, but they're desperate enough to try. Hyunwoo realized the implications immediately. They don't know we intercepted their message. They think we're still unaware of their existence. What do? We report this to Earth Command immediately. And then we prepare for the biggest change in human history. As Hyunwoo began composing his report, he looked out at the stars with new understanding. The universe was not empty after all. It was full of life. But that life had been hiding from humanity out of fear. The galaxy's peaceful species saw humans as dangerous predators from a world that should not have been able to support life. Soon, humanity would face a choice. They could ignore the distress signal and continue expanding into what they now knew was carefully avoided space. Or they could answer the call for help from species that viewed them as monsters. But first, they had to understand exactly what they were dealing with. The signal mentioned specific star systems and described the Federation's retreat from the advancing harvesters. If humans were going to get involved, they needed to know much more about both sides of this galactic war. The stars were no longer quiet. They had been full of voices all along. Humanity had just never been invited to join the conversation. Now, for the first time in galactic history, the Deathworlders had heard the call for help. The question was, what would they do about it? Captain Jinho Lee stood on the bridge of the exploration vessel New Seoul, watching his crew prepare for another routine survey mission. The ship was built for deep space exploration, equipped with the latest human technology that could survive in environments where most equipment would fail within hours. His crew of 43 had been together for 2 years, mapping star systems at the edge of human space. They were good at their job. They had to be. Human exploration vessels went places that would destroy ships from more civilized species. Chief Engineer Na Young Cho climbed up from the engine room, oil stains on her uniform and a satisfied smile on her face. She had just finished installing modifications to the ship's power systems that would let them operate in the radiation-heavy environment near their destination. Engines are running at 112% efficiency, she reported. The new shielding should protect us from anything short of a direct hit from a solar flare. Good work, Jinho said. Most species would consider it insane to deliberately fly into radiation that could cook living tissue. But humans did it regularly. They just built better shields and accepted the risks. Communications Officer Taemin looked up from his station with confusion on his face. Captain, I'm receiving a priority transmission from Earth Command. It's marked as classified and urgent. Jinho took the message and read it quickly. His expression changed from casual interest to shocked disbelief. The message contained the translated alien signal that Dr. Hyunwoo Kim and Dr. So-Young Park had discovered, along with new orders. All stop, Jinho ordered. Change course for the Vega system. Maximum speed, sir? Na Young asked. That's not our assigned patrol route. We have new orders. Taemin, send a coded message to all human ships in this sector. Tell them to converge on our position and encrypt everything with the highest level security protocols. As the New Seoul changed course, Jinho gathered his senior staff and briefed them on the discovery of the alien signal. The reaction was exactly what he expected. Shock, followed by excitement, followed by the grim realization that humanity was not alone in the universe and had been deliberately avoided by other intelligent species. They think we're monsters, Na Young said after reading the translated message. They're afraid to contact us because they think we're too dangerous. Maybe they're right, Taemin added quietly. Think about what we do for entertainment. We climb mountains that could kill us. We dive into oceans full of predators. We play sports where getting injured is considered normal. And we explore space by flying into radiation storms and landing on planets with poisonous atmospheres, Na Young added. From their perspective, we probably do look like crazy predators. Jinho studied the star chart showing their route to the Vega system. Orders from Earth Command are clear. We're to investigate the source of the signal and attempt to gather intelligence on this galactic federation. But we're not to make contact unless absolutely necessary. The journey to Vega took 8 days at maximum speed. During the trip, more human ships joined their small fleet. By the time they reached the outer edge of the Vega system, Jinho commanded a force of 12 exploration vessels and 3 military escort ships. What they found there changed everything. Humans thought they knew about their place in the galaxy. The alien construct was massive, easily 10 times larger than the biggest human space station. It hung in the darkness between planets covered in sensors and communication arrays. The design was unlike anything in human engineering. Where human ships were built for durability and function, this structure was graceful and beautiful, like a work of art that happened to be a technological marvel. It's a listening post, Taiman reported after scanning the structure. The communication equipment is incredibly advanced. They've been monitoring radio signals across dozens of star systems. Including human systems? Jinho asked. Definitely. I'm detecting data streams that match the frequencies used by Earth Command and several colony worlds. Na Young ran detailed scans of the alien technology. Captain, this is far beyond anything we can build. Their power systems alone are generating energy levels that should be impossible, and the materials they're using don't match anything in our databases. Is anyone home? Negative. The station appears to be abandoned. Life support systems are running on automatic, but I'm not detecting any biological signatures. Jinho made the decision to board the alien structure. It was exactly the kind of risk that other species would consider suicidal. But humans had built their civilization on taking calculated risks in dangerous situations. The boarding party consisted of Jinho, Nayang Taemin, and 6 security personnel equipped with full environmental suits. The airlock that granted them entry was designed for beings much taller and more slender than humans. Everything inside the station reinforced that impression. The corridors were wide and graceful, with soft lighting that created a peaceful atmosphere. The walls were covered in what appeared to be living plants that glowed with their own internal light. It was beautiful in a way that human architecture rarely achieved. The air is breathable, Nayang reported after running atmospheric tests. Oxygen levels are lower than Earth normal, but within acceptable ranges. Temperature is comfortable. No harmful chemicals or pathogens detected. They made their way to what appeared to be the central command center. Banks of alien computers displayed incomprehensible data streams, but Taemin was able to identify the communication logs and begin downloading them to portable storage devices. Captain, you need to see this, he said, pointing to one of the displays. The screen showed a 3-dimensional map of local space, with different colored markers indicating various star systems. Human colonies were marked in red with warning symbols surrounding them. They've been watching us for decades, Jinho realized. Every human expansion, every new colony, every exploration mission. They've been tracking all of it. Nayang discovered something even more disturbing in the station's database. Detailed files on human biology, psychology, and military capabilities. The aliens had studied humanity extensively, building a comprehensive profile of human strengths and weaknesses. Look at this, she said, translating information from the alien files. They classify humans as Class 5 Deathworld predators. That's apparently the highest possible threat rating. They think we're more dangerous than anything else they've ever encountered. The files contained analysis of human warfare, showing that the aliens were particularly terrified by humanity's willingness to accept casualties in order to achieve objectives. They could not understand why humans would deliberately put themselves in harm's way. They've been hiding from us, Taemin said, reading more of the translated data. Not just avoiding contact, but actively concealing their locations and communications to prevent us from finding them. Jinho downloaded as much data as possible before ordering the team back to their ship. The alien listening post contained enough information to keep human scientists busy for years, but he knew they needed to report their findings immediately. As the new soul prepared to leave the Vega system, Jinho looked back at the graceful alien structure floating in space. Somewhere out there was an entire galactic civilization that had been watching humanity with fear and fascination. They had judged humans too dangerous to contact, too unpredictable to trust. But now the situation was changing. The approaching enemy called the Harvesters was forcing the peaceful Federation species to consider desperate options. For the first time in galactic history, they might need help from the very Deathworlders they had spent so long avoiding. The question was whether humanity would be willing to help species that had been hiding from them, or whether first contact would go very badly for everyone involved. Jin-Ho began composing his report to Earth Command, knowing that his words would help determine the future of human relations with the galaxy. The stars were no longer empty. They were full of alien life that had been watching humanity from the shadows, waiting to see what the Deathworlders would do next. On the distant world of Serenity Prime, Council Leader Vexhai stood before the emergency assembly of the Galactic Federation. The Great Hall was filled with representatives from 43 different species, all united by their peaceful nature and their growing desperation. Vexhai was tall and slender like most of his people, with pale blue skin that glowed softly in the dim lighting. His species had evolved from gentle herbivores on a world where the most dangerous creature was roughly equivalent to Earth's rabbits. The concept of predation was foreign to their psychology. The Harvesters have consumed the Kepler sector, Vexhai announced to the assembled delegates. 17 worlds home to billions of our people have been stripped bare. The enemy advances faster than our evacuation fleets can retreat. A delegate from the crystalline shimmering ones spoke in harmonious tones that were translated for the other species. How long before they reach the core worlds? Our analysts estimate 18 months, Vexhai replied. Perhaps less if they continue to accelerate their expansion. The hall filled with the sounds of distress from dozens of species. Some wailed in frequencies beyond normal hearing. Others released bioluminescent displays of fear and sorrow. None of them suggested fighting back. Violence was not part of their nature, Dr. So-Young. Park had been working around the clock to decode more Federation communications. Since the discovery at Vega, her translation programs were becoming more sophisticated as she gathered additional data from the monitoring station. What she learned painted a picture of a galactic civilization unlike anything humans had imagined. The Federation species were all peaceful by nature. They had evolved on worlds with mild climates and abundant resources. None of them had faced significant predation during their evolutionary development. As a result, they had no instinctive understanding of warfare, aggression, or competition for survival. It's incredible, So-Young explained to Dr. Hyunwoo Kim as they reviewed the latest translations. Their entire society is based on cooperation and harmony. They've never had wars. They don't even have concepts for military strategy or tactical thinking. How did they survive long enough to develop technology? They didn't have to survive. Their worlds provided everything they needed. Evolution never forced them to become competitive or aggressive. They developed intelligence through social cooperation, not through conflict. Meanwhile, Captain Jin-Ho Lee was preparing for humanity's first official contact with alien life. The Federation had finally detected human presence at the Vega listening post and had sent a small patrol ship to investigate. The alien vessel was beautiful in a way that human ships could never be. It looked more like a work of art than a spacecraft, with flowing curves and surfaces that seemed to shift color in the starlight. It moved with graceful motions that suggested its builders had prioritized elegance over efficiency. "They're requesting communication," reported Tai-Min Oh from his position at the communications station. "The signal is coming in multiple formats. I think they're trying to find a method we can understand." Jin-Ho nodded to his cultural specialist, Dr. Yoon-Ji Lim, who had been rushed to the scene when Earth Command learned that first contact was imminent. She was an expert in human psychology and cultural differences, though she had never expected to apply her knowledge to alien species. "Remember," Yoon-Ji said to the bridge crew, "everything we do will be analyzed and interpreted by beings who think completely differently than we do. We need to be careful not to appear threatening." "How do we not appear threatening to species that consider us apex predators?" the young asked. "We move slowly. We keep our voices calm. We avoid sudden movements, and we try not to mention anything related to hunting, fighting, or competition." The first communication attempt was a disaster. The alien crew panicked when they saw human faces on their viewing screens. To beings who had never encountered predators, human forward-facing eyes and prominent canine teeth were terrifying indicators of a carnivorous species. The Federation ship immediately began retreat procedures, but Jinho ordered his communications officer to continue broadcasting peaceful intentions. It took 6 hours of patient transmission before the aliens agreed to continue the conversation. Dr. Hyunwoo Kim led the first diplomatic exchange from the safety of his research station, speaking through communication relays to avoid direct visual contact with the frightened aliens. Even his voice, transmitted through multiple filters to make it sound less aggressive, seemed to disturb the Federation representatives. "We received your distress signal," Hyunwoo began carefully. "We want to understand the threat you face." The alien response came after a long delay, as if they were debating whether to answer at all. "You are the Deathworlders. You should not have heard our communications. Your species is classified as too dangerous for contact. We're not dangerous to you. We want to help." Help? The concept seemed to confuse the aliens. Your species evolved through predation and violence. Your world is a death trap of hostile life forms and catastrophic environmental conditions. How could beings from such a place offer help? Dr. Yoonji Lim joined the conversation, using her expertise in cultural communication to bridge the gap between human and Federation psychology. "We understand that we seem frightening to you, but the same qualities that make us seem dangerous also make us capable of solving problems that peaceful species cannot handle." The Federation representatives described the harvesters in terms that made clear why the peaceful species could not resist them. The enemy was perfectly adapted for destruction and consumption. They moved through space like a plague, converting everything they encountered into raw materials for their expanding fleets. "We have tried hiding," the lead alien diplomat explained. "We have tried evacuation. We have tried negotiation. Nothing works. The harvesters do not communicate. They simply consume." "Have you tried fighting back?" Jinho asked. The question created another long silence. When the aliens finally responded, their confusion was clear. Fighting involves causing harm to other beings. We cannot comprehend how intelligent life could deliberately inflict damage on other intelligent life. Even in self-defense, we do not understand this concept. If we harmed another being even to protect ourselves, we would become like the thing we oppose. It is better to perish maintaining our principles than to survive by abandoning them. Dr. Yoonji Lim realized they were dealing with species that were psychologically incapable of violence, even when faced with extinction. Their peaceful nature was not a choice or a philosophy. It was hardwired into their psychology by millions of years of evolution on worlds without significant threats. "What if we fought for you?" Nayoung suggested during a break in communications. "They don't have to become violent themselves. We could handle the military aspects while they provide support and resources." Would they accept help from beings they consider monsters? Taimin wondered. When the negotiations resumed, Hyunwoo presented the human proposal. "We can fight the harvesters. We know how to organize military campaigns and conduct warfare, but we would need your cooperation and your advanced technology." The Federation response was immediate and frightened. "You would wage war in our name? You would kill in our defense?" "If necessary, yes. This is exactly what we feared about Deathworlders. You speak of killing as if it were a normal activity. For us it is. We've been doing it for millions of years. It's how we survived on our world." Dr. Yoonji Lim stepped in before the conversation could deteriorate further. "We understand your fear of violence, but consider this. The harvesters are already killing your people by the billions. They will continue until your entire civilization is extinct. We offer you a chance to survive." The Federation delegates requested time to consult with their home governments. The concept of accepting military aid from predatory species was so alien to their thinking that it required extensive debate and analysis. While they waited for a response, human military analysts studied all available data on the harvester threat. What they found confirmed their worst fears. The enemy was not just powerful, they were perfectly designed for the systematic destruction of peaceful civilizations. The Federation species had been retreating for centuries, always hoping that the harvesters would be satisfied with what they had already consumed. But the enemy showed no signs of slowing their advance. Finally, after 3 days of debate, the Federation sent their response. "We will meet with your representatives to discuss cooperation. But we must meet in a neutral location, with safety protocols for both sides." The meeting was arranged in empty space between star systems, with both sides maintaining safe distances and multiple escape routes. It would be humanity's first face-to-face encounter with intelligent alien life, and the outcome would determine whether the galaxy's peaceful species would survive the coming darkness. Military analyst Commander Dong-Hyun Kang arrived at the neutral meeting point with a fleet of human warships that made the Federation delegates visibly nervous. The human vessels were built for combat, with heavy armor plating and weapon systems that could reduce planets to rubble. To species that had never seen military hardware, they looked like instruments of apocalypse. Dong-Hyun had spent his entire career studying warfare and military strategy. He had commanded ground forces during the expansion wars on 3 different colony worlds. He understood combat in ways that peaceful species could never comprehend. The Federation had provided detailed records of the Harvester advance, and what Dong-Hyun discovered kept him awake for days. The enemy was not just powerful or aggressive. They were perfectly evolved for the systematic extermination of intelligent life. The Harvesters are not a civilization in any sense we would recognize, he explained to the mixed Human-Alien Council during their first joint meeting. They appear to be a single biological entity that is spread across multiple star systems. Each ship, each unit, each individual harvester is part of a larger organism. The Federation representatives listened with growing horror as Dong-Hyun described the enemy's capabilities. The harvesters could adapt their biology to survive in any environment. They could process any form of matter for energy. Most terrifying of all, they could absorb and integrate the knowledge and technology of every species they consumed. They learn from their prey. Dong-Hyun continued. Every species they destroy makes them more effective at destroying the next one. They have been consuming civilizations for thousands of years, accumulating knowledge and capabilities. Dr. So Young Park had been studying harvester communication patterns in the Federation records. They hunt by detecting specific electromagnetic signatures produced by intelligent thought. That's why the Federation's strategy of hiding has been somewhat effective. By limiting their technology use in communications, they reduce their detectability. Tactical Officer Miran Song analyzed the Federation's previous encounters with the Harvesters and was appalled by what she found. Their military doctrine is completely defensive. Every engagement follows the same pattern: detect enemy approach, attempt to evacuate population, retreat when overwhelmed, abandon territory to the enemy. What about counterattacks? Dong-Hyun asked. None. They have never attempted to strike back at Harvester forces. Their idea of a successful military operation is one where they escape without any casualties on their side, regardless of strategic consequences. The Federation military commander, a graceful being called Thaisara, tried to explain their perspective. Every life is precious beyond measure. The loss of even one individual is a tragedy that affects our entire society. How can you suggest deliberately putting beings in harm's way? Because sometimes sacrifice is necessary to protect the greater whole, Miran replied. If you're not willing to accept some losses in order to stop the enemy, you'll eventually lose everything. We cannot accept your philosophy of acceptable casualties. It is contrary to our fundamental beliefs about the value of life. Commander Jin-Ho Lee had been observing the cultural exchange with growing concern. The problem isn't their technology or their numbers. The problem is that they're psychologically incapable of fighting an effective war. Dr. Yoonji Lim had been working with Federation psychologists to understand the depth of their peaceful conditioning. It's not just cultural, she reported. Their entire neural structure is different from humans. They literally cannot process the concept of deliberately harming another being, even in self-defense. Then how do we work with them? We don't ask them to fight. We ask them to support us while we fight for them. The Federation had initially been horrified by human military planning sessions. When Commander Dong-Hyun presented strategies that involved acceptable loss ratios and calculated risks, several alien delegates had to leave the room. The concept of deliberately putting forces in danger to achieve strategic objectives was incomprehensible to their psychology. You speak of war as if it were a science, Thaisara observed with disturbed fascination. You have mathematical formulas for destruction and death. War is a science, Dong-Hyun replied. It has rules and principles that can be studied and applied. The species that understands those principles better than their enemy will usually win. And you believe you understand these principles better than the harvesters? We understand them differently. The harvesters are perfectly adapted for consuming peaceful prey. But humans aren't peaceful prey. We're predators who know how to fight back. Long range. Federation scouts reported that the harvesters had detected the increased military activity around the neutral meeting zone and were accelerating their advance toward Federation core worlds. Time was running out for the peaceful species. Commander Dong Hyun proposed Operation Prometheus, a plan to strike directly at the harvester fleet using combined human Federation forces. The strategy involved using human ships as assault units while Federation vessels provided technological support and intelligence coordination. The plan requires putting human forces in extreme danger, he explained to the mixed council. We'll be facing an enemy that has never encountered organized resistance. They may adapt quickly to our tactics. What are the projected casualties? Asked Dr. Hyun-Woo Kim. Optimistic estimate 30%. Realistic estimate 50%. Worst case, total mission failure with complete loss of attacking forces. The Federation delegates reacted with shock and horror. To species that considered any casualties unacceptable, the idea of deliberately accepting such losses was incomprehensible. You're talking about the deaths of thousands of beings, Thaisara said with disbelief. How can you plan for such massive loss of life? Because the alternative is the extinction of your entire civilization, Dong Hyun replied. Sometimes survival requires accepting terrible costs. Cannot authorize a plan that involves the deliberate sacrifice of so many lives, Commander. Jin-Ho Lee stood up and addressed the Federation Council directly. Then your species will become extinct, and the harvesters will continue consuming the galaxy until there's nothing left. Those are your choices. Accept casualties in a fight for survival, or accept total annihilation through inaction. The debate continued for hours, with human military officers trying to explain tactical necessity to aliens who had no psychological framework for understanding it. Finally, Dr. Yoonji Lim suggested a compromise. What if we phrase it differently? She proposed. Instead of accepting casualties, you're providing humans with the tools and support we need to do what we do naturally. Hunt dangerous prey that threatens our allies. The reframing helped some of the Federation delegates understand the proposal. Humans weren't asking them to become violent. Humans were offering to be violent on their behalf, using abilities that evolution had given them for exactly this kind of situation. You would hunt the harvesters? Thaisara asked. Yes, we would track them down and destroy them before they can consume more of your worlds, and you believe your predatory instincts would be effective against an enemy that has consumed dozens of civilizations. We believe that an enemy adapted for consuming peaceful prey might not be prepared for prey that fights back intelligently and aggressively. The Federation Council requested another recess to debate the human proposal. The concept of accepting military aid from predatory species violated every principle their civilizations were built on, but the alternative was extinction. While they waited for a decision, human forces prepared for the possibility of combat against an enemy unlike anything they had ever faced. The harvesters were more dangerous than any foe in human history, but they had never encountered a species that specialized in warfare and tactical thinking. The outcome of Operation Prometheus would determine not just the fate of the Federation, but the future balance of power in the galaxy. For the first time in their existence, the peaceful species of the galaxy were about to discover what happened when Deathworlders went to war. On the Federation capital world of Harmony, Dr. Yoonji Lim established the first Human Federation Cultural Exchange Center in a building that looked more like a garden than a military facility. The structure was designed to make the peaceful alien species feel comfortable while they learned concepts that were completely foreign to their psychology. The first training sessions were disasters that would have been comedic if the stakes weren't so high. When human instructors demonstrated basic tactical movement, Federation volunteers collapsed in distress at the sight of beings deliberately moving toward danger instead of away from it. The concept of flanking maneuvers causes them psychological trauma, Yoonji reported to Commander Dong Hyun Kang during their daily briefing. They cannot understand why anyone would willingly put themselves in a position where they might be harmed. What about basic weapons training? Worse, 3 of the Harmony singers had complete nervous breakdowns when we showed them how human firearms work. They couldn't process the idea that intelligent beings would create tools specifically designed to harm other intelligent beings. Meanwhile, Chief Engineer Na Cho was having her own challenges working with Federation technology specialists. The aliens were brilliant scientists and engineers, but their creations were designed for beings who never expected to encounter hostility. Their computers don't have security protocols, Na explained to her human engineering team. The concept of protecting information from unauthorized access is completely alien to them. They've built a civilization based on complete trust and openness. What about their ships? Beautiful, efficient, and completely useless in combat. They have no armor, no weapons, no defensive systems. They're optimized for comfort and scientific research, not survival in hostile environments. Na began the delicate process of weaponizing Federation technology without traumatizing the aliens who had created it. She started with defensive systems, explaining that shields and armor were simply tools for protecting people from environmental hazards. Think of it as protection from cosmic radiation or asteroid impacts, she told the nervous Federation engineers. We're just extending the same principles to protect against more directed threats. The breakthrough came when Na began working with a young Federation engineer named Zephyr, who belonged to a species that had retained some ancestral memory of predation. Unlike the completely peaceful species, Zephyr's people had evolved from omnivores and could understand basic survival concepts. Your weapons technology is crude but effective, Zephyr observed as Na demonstrated human plasma cannons. You sacrifice elegance for raw destructive power. Elegance doesn't matter if you're dead, Na replied. Sometimes crude and effective is better than beautiful and useless. Together, they began developing hybrid technologies that combined Federation scientific advancement with human military engineering. A medical scanner became a target acquisition system. A habitat environmental processor became a weapon capable of making enemy air unbreathable. A simple transport vessel became a heavily armored assault ship. Captain Jin Ho. Lee was working with Federation military commander Thaisara to identify alien species that might adapt to human tactical thinking. Most of the Federation races were psychologically incapable of aggression, but a few retained enough ancestral survival instincts to learn basic military concepts. The Kithara might be your best option, Thaisara suggested reluctantly. Their species evolved from predators before they achieved sentience. They have spent thousands of years suppressing their aggressive instincts through meditation and social conditioning, but the underlying neural pathways still exist. Can they be trained? Perhaps, but asking them to embrace their predatory heritage would be asking them to abandon everything their civilization stands for. The first meeting with Kythera representatives was tense. They were reptilian beings with powerful physical builds and sharp claws that they kept carefully sheathed. Their ancestors had been apex predators, but thousands of years of peaceful evolution had transformed them into gentle philosophers. You ask us to become monsters again, said Kythera Elder Sithak, his translated voice heavy with distress. We have spent millennia learning to control our violent impulses. We will not return to the savagery of our ancestors. We're not asking you to become savages, Jinho replied carefully. We're asking you to remember that sometimes survival requires using abilities you'd rather not use. Our ancestors nearly destroyed our world through endless warfare. We achieved peace by rejecting everything they represented. And now that peace is threatened by an enemy that doesn't share your values, sometimes the only way to preserve peace is to fight for it. The debate with the Kythera continued for days. They understood human military concepts better than other Federation species, but their cultural conditioning made them reluctant to apply that understanding. Finally, a young Kythera named Vracht volunteered for human tactical training. My clutch siblings think I am insane, Vracht told Jinho during their first training session. They believe I will lose my civilized nature and become a monster like our ancestors. Combat training doesn't make you a monster. It makes you capable of protecting the things you care about. The human Kythera training program produced the Federation's first effective military unit. Vracht and his volunteers learned to suppress their peaceful conditioning long enough to execute basic tactical maneuvers. They were not natural warriors like humans, but they could function as soldiers when necessary. Meanwhile, long-range Federation scouts reported increasingly disturbing news about the Harvester advance. The enemy had detected the unusual activity around Federation core worlds and was accelerating their approach. Worse, they appeared to be adapting their tactics in response to evidence of organized resistance. They're learning, reported Dr. So-Young Park after analyzing the latest intelligence reports. The harvesters are modifying their approach patterns and deployment strategies. They know something has changed. Commander Dong-Hyun Kang studied the enemy's new behavior patterns and made a disturbing discovery. They're not just adapting tactically, they're bringing additional forces to bear. It's as if they recognize that this target might actually fight back. How long do we have? Weeks, not months. The first Harvester scout ships will reach the Outer Federation systems within 20 days. The news forced an immediate decision from the Federation Council. Despite their psychological horror at the concept of warfare, they authorized Operation Prometheus. For the first time in galactic history, the peaceful species would actively resist their own extinction. We place our survival in the hands of Deathworlders, announced Federation Council leader Vexhai with visible distress. May the universe forgive us for what we are about to unleash. The human fleet began final preparations for combat against an enemy that had never faced organized resistance. Federation vessels were hastily retrofitted with human weapons and armor, creating hybrid ships that looked like works of art equipped for war. Dr. Yunji Lim provided psychological support for Federation crew members who were struggling with the concept of participating in violent action. Many of them required medication to suppress panic responses when human tactics were explained to them. They're terrified of what they're about to become, she reported to the human command staff. Some of them believe that participating in warfare will fundamentally change their nature as beings. Maybe it will, Jinho replied. But the alternative is extinction. Sometimes survival requires becoming something different than what you were. The combined Human Federation fleet assembled at the edge of known space, preparing to intercept the Harvester advance before it could reach populated systems. It was the largest military force in galactic history, representing dozens of species united by desperation and the leadership of beings evolved for warfare. As the fleet prepared for departure, Young Cho made final adjustments to the hybrid weapon systems that would give them their only chance against the Harvesters. The technology was untested, combining human military engineering with Federation scientific principles in ways that neither species fully understood. Will it work? Jinho asked as he inspected the modifications to his ship's armaments. I honestly don't know, Young admitted. We're using technology that shouldn't be possible, operated by species that shouldn't be able to work together, against an enemy that has never lost a battle. But it's the best chance we've got. The fleet departed for the Nebular Gates, the region of space where they would make their stand against the Harvesters. Behind them, billions of Federation citizens waited to learn whether their peaceful civilization would survive its first encounter with organized warfare. For the first time in thousands of years, predators and prey were working together against a common enemy. The outcome would determine not just the fate of the Federation, but the future evolution of galactic civilization. The Battle of the Nebular Gates began at 0347 hours Galactic Standard Time, when long-range sensors detected the first wave of Harvester ships emerging from quantum space. The enemy fleet was larger than anyone had expected, stretching across thousands of kilometers of space like a living organism, reaching out to consume everything in its path. Captain Jinho Lee stood on the bridge of the flagship New Seoul, now heavily modified with Federation technology that made it far more powerful than any purely human vessel. Around him, his mixed crew of humans and aliens prepared for the first battle in galactic history, where prey species would actively fight back against their predators. Enemy contact confirmed, reported Taimin. From the communication station. Harvester fleet composition. 147 major vessels, approximately 3,000 smaller attack units. Total biomass estimate suggests a mature hunting swarm. Federation fleet status? All ships report ready for combat, replied the translated voice of Commander Thaisara, who was coordinating the alien vessels from her position aboard a heavily armored Federation cruiser. Our crews are terrified, but they remain at their posts. Chief Engineer Young Cho monitored the hybrid weapon systems that represented the combined technological achievements of two completely different approaches to science and engineering. Power levels are stable across all modified ships. The Federation energy cores are providing more power than we've ever had access to. The first exchange of fire revealed the true nature of the enemy they faced. The Harvesters moved with perfect coordination, their ships flowing through space like schools of predatory fish. Their weapons were unlike anything in human or Federation databases. seeming to dissolve matter at the molecular level rather than simply destroying it. But for the first time in their existence, the harvesters encountered prey that shot back. Human tactical doctrine emphasized concentrated firepower and coordinated maneuvers that maximized damage while minimizing exposure to enemy fire. The hybrid ships, with their combination of human weapons and Federation shielding, proved devastatingly effective against an enemy that had never faced organized resistance. Direct hit on Harvester, Formation Alpha, reported Tactical Officer Miran Song. Enemy vessels are showing damage patterns. They're not invulnerable. The Harvesters responded with confusion rather than fear. They had consumed hundreds of civilizations, but none had ever fought back with such organized aggression. Their tactics were optimized for overwhelming terrified prey, not for engaging coordinated military forces. Dr. So Young Park coordinated battlefield communications from her position aboard the command vessel, translating human battle doctrine into concepts that Federation crews could understand and execute. Her real-time linguistic analysis allowed for unprecedented coordination between species with completely different ways of thinking. Federation Squadron 7 reports successful missile strike on enemy cluster. She translated from the alien communications. They're adapting to human tactical concepts faster than we expected. The battle's first phase lasted 6 hours, with both sides probing for weaknesses while avoiding decisive engagement. The Harvesters were learning from each exchange, adapting their formations and weapons to counter human tactics. But the humans were learning too, studying enemy response patterns and developing new strategies. Commander Dong Hyun Kang identified the critical moment when the battle would be won or lost. "The enemy is bringing up their heavy units," he reported to the Combined Fleet Command. "Those larger vessels are probably command ships controlling the smaller units. If we can take them out, we might disrupt their coordination. That would require a direct assault against their strongest positions," Jinho observed. "Casualties would be severe." "Acceptable losses for strategic victory," Dong Hyun replied with the cold calculation that had shocked Federation allies throughout their cooperation. "We knew this battle would be expensive." The Federation commanders struggled with the concept of deliberately sacrificing ships and crews to achieve military objectives. Even after weeks of cultural exchange, they could not fully understand how humans could make such calculations. "We cannot authorize deliberate sacrifice of our people," Thaisara protested. "There must be another way." "There is no other way," Jinho replied firmly. "War is about making hard choices. Either we take losses now to win the battle, or we all die when the enemy overruns our positions." The turning point came when Commander Vrakhth, the young Cathara who had volunteered for human tactical training, made the decision that saved the battle. Leading a squadron of hybrid Federation vessels, he executed a flanking maneuver that brought his ships within close combat range of the Harvester command cluster. All Federation units. "This is Vrakhth," his translated voice came across the battlefield communications network. "We are engaging enemy command ships at close range. We may not survive, but we will make our sacrifice count." The Cathara-led assault succeeded beyond all expectations. The Federation ships, with their advanced shielding and human-designed weapons, tore through the Harvester command structure before the enemy could adapt to the unexpected aggression. Several command ships were destroyed outright, causing massive disruption in Harvester coordination. "Enemy formations are breaking up," reported Miran Song with excitement. "They're losing cohesion across multiple sectors." But the Harvesters had one final surprise. As their organized formations collapsed, the individual ships began to merge together, combining their mass and resources into larger, more powerful units. The enemy was adapting not just tactically but biologically, transforming itself in real time to counter human strategy. "They're becoming something new," Nayung observed with fascination and horror. "Those merged units are unlike anything in our databases." The final phase of the battle became a desperate struggle between human adaptability and Harvester evolution. As the enemy transformed itself into new configurations, human crews had to develop counter-tactics in real time, using principles they had learned over centuries of warfare against the unknown capabilities of a biologically adaptive foe. Dr. Hyunwoo Kim coordinated the galaxy-wide sensor network that had been established to track Harvester movements, ensuring that no enemy ships could escape to rebuild their forces elsewhere. All retreat routes are monitored, he reported. If they run, we'll know where they go. But the harvesters were not retreating. For the first time in their existence, they had encountered prey that might actually defeat them, and their response was to commit everything to the battle. The merged command units unleashed weapons that began to destabilize local space-time, threatening to destroy both fleets in a final act of mutual annihilation. They're willing to die rather than accept defeat, Jinho realized. They'd rather destroy everything than let us win. Then we don't give them the choice, Nyang replied, activating the experimental weapon system she had been holding in reserve. The hybrid technology, combining human engineering with Federation energy manipulation, created effects that neither species could have achieved alone. The final salvo of the battle came from every human and Federation ship simultaneously, concentrating their combined firepower on the merged harvester units. The weapons fired were beyond anything either species had previously imagined, drawing on scientific principles that challenged the basic laws of physics. When the energy discharge cleared, the harvester fleet was gone. Not destroyed in any conventional sense, but simply absent, as if they had never existed. The hybrid weapons had achieved something unprecedented, the complete elimination of an enemy that had considered itself immortal. Harvester fleet status, 0 contacts, reported Taman. Oh, with disbelief in his voice. Long-range sensors confirm no enemy survivors. The aftermath of the Battle of the Nebular Gates transformed galactic civilization forever. The Federation species, having participated in their first military victory, discovered that violence in defense of life was not the same as the mindless aggression they had feared. We are still peaceful beings, Federation Council leader Vexhai announced to the galaxy, but we are no longer helpless prey. The Deathworlders have taught us that sometimes survival requires strength. The establishment of joint human Federation colonies began within months of the battle's end. Former prey species learned to live alongside the galaxy's apex predators, discovering that humans were dangerous only to those who threatened what they protected. Dr. Yunji Lim oversaw the cultural integration programs that helped both sides adapt to their new relationship. Humans have found their role in the galaxy, she reported in her final analysis. We're not conquerors or destroyers. We're guardians for species that cannot guard themselves. Chief Engineer Na Young Cho established the first joint technology development programs, combining human innovation with Federation scientific advancement to create wonders that neither species could achieve alone. The hybrid ships that had won the battle became the foundation for a new generation of vessels designed for both exploration and defense. Captain Jinho Lee took command of the first joint exploration fleet, leading mixed crews of humans and aliens into uncharted regions of the galaxy. Their mission was to search for other threatened civilizations and offer them the protection that had saved the Federation. The stars were no longer quiet. They carried new voices, the songs of peaceful species who had learned they did not have to face extinction alone, and the determined calls of Deathworlders who had found their purpose as protectors of those who could not protect themselves. In the end, the galaxy discovered that its most dangerous predators could also be its most devoted guardians. The universe had remained silent not because it was empty, but because its peaceful children had been hiding in fear. Now, with Deathworlders standing watch, they could finally sing their songs of joy and discovery without terror of what might hear them in the darkness between stars. Dr. So-Young Park established the Galactic Communication Network, a system that allowed all member species to share knowledge and culture without fear of detection by hostile forces. For the first time in galactic history, the exchange of ideas flowed freely across the stars. Commander Donghyun Kang founded the Joint Defense Academy, where Federation species learned basic military concepts, while humans studied alien sciences and philosophy. The curriculum balanced the necessities of survival with the values of peaceful coexistence. The young Kithara warrior Vrath became a symbol of transformation, proving that even the most peaceful species could find courage when their families and homes were threatened. His actions during the battle inspired other Federation species to overcome their psychological limitations when survival demanded it. Years later, as humans and Federation species worked together to build a safer galaxy, children of both civilizations grew up knowing that the universe was vast and sometimes dangerous, but never empty and never hopeless. The stars themselves seemed brighter, carrying the voices of friends rather than the silence of fear. The Deathworlders had answered the call, and the galaxy would never be quiet again.